Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here, Taste Life Nutrition radio and podcast, streaming live on kuhsdenver.com, where we are continuing our conversation from last week. Super excited about this. We've got Douglas Mulhall on. We also now have Suzi Hansen with Vibrant America, an amazing lab company that I'm a huge fan of. And we wanted to bring this conversation to you because, you know, what we talked about last week was toxicity and how it impacts a component of protein that we don't often talk about, which is elastin. And so we're going to do a recap on that. But this week we're going to move further into that and really talk about the toxicants that can be problematic for the elastin, but then the elastin is every part of our body, right? So the elastin is significant in making sure that it stays elastic, so we can move well, and so we can function well, and so our body functions well. So, Suzi and Douglas, I'm so excited. Thanks for being with me.
We're excited to be here. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's gonna be so good.
And it's nice to be here with Suzi.
Yeah, I'm so glad that y'all are getting to meet.
It's great to have the analytical part because it's so important.
It is. It really is. Yeah, I agree. I always learn all kinds of fun stuff from Suzi. So, well, and all of the clinicians there at Vibrant. Everybody's so wonderful. So, as always, though, we start the show with gratitude because I fully believe that gratitude can change the world. We have, especially after this weekend, we've got all kinds of craziness going on. So, let's just change the attitude and have some gratitude because this is a really, really amazing time to live with the technology we have, with the lab testing we have, with the understanding of health and wellness and digging for root cause. These are the things that can change lives, and this is why I get so excited about having conversations like this. So let's do this. Let's start with you, Suzi, if you're good with that, and you just tell me what you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for a lot of things actually, but because we are talking about health and wellness, I think a lot of us that are healthy take our health for advantage. And I think we have to be so thankful for having good health and being able to get out of bed in the morning. And, when we start talking to patients and hear some of the struggles that they go through, and they've done it for 10, 15 years, it's something that I think it's very easy for us. I am thankful that I feel for these people that have been searching for answers and sometimes just take a long time to find them.
Yeah.
But I am so thankful for my health, and I'm thankful for friends like you guys that we get on this and share some type of things that, maybe they haven't thought of, or getting, some information from you guys of giving them answers if they have struggled for many years. That's our mission here, is bringing better medicine for patients to get quicker outcomes and maybe find something that they haven't thought about yet that could be causing some of their issues.
Yeah, it's really true. You and I had a conversation yesterday or the day before about a client who has been literally struggling for 10 years, thank you. And we're still working to try to figure it out. And it's a process. It can be frustrating. There's a lot to it and a lot to learn, but sometimes it just takes time. We can dig it out, right? So yeah, it's good stuff. Douglas, how about you?
Well, first of all, I am thankful that a very good friend of ours is still alive today because he was working on building his deck the other day, and he thought he had indigestion, and he ended up with a quadruple bypass.
Man.
And he would to actually drive himself to the hospital, and that saved his life. So I am thankful that he's still here with us, and I wish he had read the book earlier because this is what we're trying to help people to avoid, is these incredible emergencies that happen. And I'm also thankful to be working with the doctors and scientists that are actually, I find myself very privileged to have access to these people who are on the cutting edge and know what they're doing, and to be here today with Suzi because I'd like to start a conversation with Vibrant about how we can work together to bring the analytics and the prevention a step forward. So all of those things today.
Man, I love making connections. This is good stuff. Awesome. What am I grateful for? I think that I'm just going to kind of piggyback because being in the position I'm in for multiple reasons, right? I get to connect with amazing people who are doing amazing things like both of you. And then, connect others and then inform others, right? I'll never say that I know, there's so much that I don't know, but the fact that I have a platform like this to get out good information that so many of us don't know about. We talk about looking and understanding the root cause of dysfunction, essentially. And so often it's, I just need to go take a drug, or we're looking at the wrong things. You go back to cardiovascular health itself. What are we looking at? We're looking at, your cholesterol is too high. You could have a heart attack. One, why is your cholesterol high? And is it good cholesterol, or is it all these things that we can get into, because there's such a problem when we talk about good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, because they're really, the bad cholesterol that we're talking about is not the bad cholesterol in a sense. And there's so much, I need to put my glasses on. I need to see you guys better. So frustrating. I need work on my eyes is what I need. So anyway,
we can talk about that.
Okay, good. Because that's where that's my biggest problem right now, are my eyeballs. But really, really digging in. This is why Vibrant's so amazing, because when I'm talking with clients and we're talking about cardiovascular health, sorry, I'm getting ahead a little bit, but I'm going to finish what I'm saying. I have to backtrack what they are told and what they understand and what is all in mainstream media and mainstream health, because it's for one, I feel like it's superficial. It's not digging deep enough. There's not an understanding of what it actually means. And so when I do this testing, through Vibrant, because they have such a big panel, it's an eye-opening situation, because people are like, I had no idea. And it gives me so many tools then to help people to mitigate the problems that we're going to be talking about today. So I'll leave it there. And let's just start with a quick recap, Douglas, on last week, so we can move into what I already jumped into.
Sure, quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Save the elastic of life.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
This that's how we ended up the show.
Yeah.
So this stuff is, we call it the elastic of life because it drives every breath we take and every move we make. It's in every organ. Anything that expands or contracts, including all of your arteries, your heart, your organs. You can't have sex without it. All of these things are driven by something that most people have never heard about, and that's called elastin fiber. This is not collagen. Collagen that most people are told about gives your body strength and firmness, but it does not make it flexible like the cosmetics companies are trying to tell you. It's the elastic fiber that's woven in between the collagen that actually does that. And it basically does this, expanding to 8 times its standing length and back again in a fraction of a second, billions of times in your lifetime. And it's the longest lasting protein in your body. So it's a good idea to take care of it, especially because around the age of 30, in every single one of us, it starts to fall apart because your body stops making it. And so the result of that is that it starts a vicious cycle of damage, injury, inflammation that leads to a lot of these chronic conditions. And it's really amazing because most people have never heard of elastin actually as a cause of cardiovascular and a lot of these other problems, but actually it is. Its degradation is a basic trigger for these inflammatory responses, which Suzi is going to be talking about when she talks about their inflammatory panel. So the elastic of life, really important. Just a quick picture that I showed last time, and that is on this side here, you've got elastin fiber in a 6-year-old. On this side here, you got elastin fiber in a 90-year-old. That's happening to all of us. For those of you who are just listening and not seeing, the 90-year-old has got all kinds of frazzled stuff, and the 6-year-old is nice and smooth like a baby's bottom. So that's what happens during our lifetime. And it's your lungs, just to give one example. Your lungs, the the air sacs in your lungs that expand and contract, that's elastin. So you can't breathe without it. So the problem that we're going to talk about today is that one of the main antagonists that creates elastrin degradation is heavy metals.
So let's talk about that. I had a question, I think it was just yesterday. And somebody said, what are heavy metals? So
Exactly.
It's funny because, I mean, I know what it is, but it's not a it's becoming more common, but it's not a common term, you know.
Well, it is. Rock bands.
Okay. There you go.
Well, that's what most people think of.
Yeah.
You know, when they hear heavy metal, they think of rock bands.
Yeah, true.
There is a certain truth to that, because rock bands are working with heavy metals in all their instruments and their and everything else. So it's like a bit of an irony there. And Suzi's can probably speak to heavy metals actually better than I can. But they're called heavy for a very simple scientific reason that no one's been able to explain, and that is because it's any metal that's 5 times more dense than water. That's the technical definition. That's why it's called heavy. But that's not the problem with it. Its weight is not the problem. The problem is that most of it, if not all of it, has no place whatsoever in your body, and yet, ever since human beings walked the earth, we have been bombarded with heavy metals, and even more so in our modern culture. So, metals such as lead, cadmium, and arsenic are known major contributors to provoking cardiovascular disease, but it's worse than that. They are also carcinogenic, they're mutagenic, they mutate your cells and your genes, and they affect your reproductive organs, which is known as the CMR stuff in technical terms. So no matter which way you look, this stuff is really bad. And when it gets into you, the molecules sit next to the elastin fiber in your arteries and actually actively aid it and fray it. And that's the problem. And that initiates the damage inflammatory response that is common to so many medical conditions. It's not the only cause of inflammation,
Sure.
but it's definitely a very significant cause. So that's in a nutshell, you know, and there's a whole lot more heavy metals. Everything from, you know, uranium to tin.
Right.
These are all metals. They're used in our industrial processes, but to be clear, they've been on Earth a lot longer than we have. They're in our water, they're in our air, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So yes, and our bodies have been battling against them ever since, and haven't learned too well how to live with these metals. So we're going to be talking about what to do about that as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting because we can look at and Suzi, this is going to come to you here in just a second, but you know, we can look at these things you know, in a genetic level. So some of us don't have the ability to detoxify these hey Sabrina, to detoxify these metals well due to our specific epigenetic makeup, right? And so, which is cool because we can look at these things. This is the stuff we can see in labs, right? We can look at our metals, we can look at our genetics. So Suzi, I'd love for you to jump in on that and talk about, well, all of the goodness of what we can see and find out.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time because I do think it's something a little bit newer that people are talking about, because now we have the testing where we can say, what is your toxic bucket? And I think that is one thing that people need to start looking at as getting a starting point of how full is your toxic bucket? Because a lot of times you'll say, nothing has changed in my life. I didn't, you know, I'm living in the same house, I'm doing the same thing. The problem with it is the more toxins that you put into your body, sometimes it doesn't get rid of them. So I always like to say, you know, when we're looking at like endocrine disruptors and inflammation in the body, what are the triggers? And I will tell you, the number one contributor to inflammation in the body is environmental toxins, heavy metals. And so I think it's something where it's a simple urine test, but knowing your toxic load. Yeah. And if that bucket is getting really full, you need to start removing toxins. And it's something super easy that we can do, but I think the education is just starting to get out there, and the testing is just starting to get out there of what is that toxic load, and how can you guys start, patients, listeners, how can they start decreasing them?
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, it disrupts everything in the body once that bucket gets too full.
Yeah.
And by knowledge is bliss. And so if you know it before you trigger an autoimmune disease, before you have an event, heart attack or stroke, there is so many things. And that's one thing I put in my notes, and we were talking about this. Cardiovascular disease is preventable. But doing basic testing and just saying, hey, my lipids are fine, I'm good to go, it is not what we know that can help us prevent, change our lifestyle, epigenetics. What is your environment?
Yep.
These are all things that 100% we can change, little changes, but if you don't know, we were just talking about someone that had a quadruple bypass this week. Those are things though that we could get in, look at in your 30s and 40s and substantially reduce patients' risks.
Yeah, it's fascinating what we can do to, so I don't like the word longevity. I like, because we don't know how long we're gonna live, right? Anything can happen, but it's about the quality of life that we have. But if we know our markers and we know how to mitigate our markers, then that has the potential of increasing longevity, because then we have the potential to control the markers, eliminate the toxins, know how we're mitigating it in our environment and in our world. We can understand our genetic makeup to a large degree at this point. And so it is fascinating when we talk about longevity, because so many of these events that we're struggling with when it comes to cardiovascular disease and many of the others are, like you said, they're so preventable. But if we don't know, if we don't understand, if we don't dig, if we're not looking, then it's a surprise, kind of like Douglas, your friend, right? And it doesn't have to be a surprise.
Yeah, and just I want to get to terminology in just a moment, because both you and Suzi have used a couple of words here: genetics, epigenetics, and genetics related to heavy metals. So I just want to talk about that for a moment. The difference between genetics and epigenetics, most people have heard about genetics, and they think your genetic makeup determines your fate, and it does not. Right. The studies have clearly shown that between 70 and 90% of all medical conditions are triggered by epigenetics. So just because you are genetically inclined towards something does not mean you're going to get it. A lot of it depends on what you expose yourself to in your environment, and that's known as epigenetics. Epi stands for over genetics, and it's a very important reason why it's called that, because in our lives it's actually more important in terms of triggering our health and our disease. And the big difference between fooling around with your genes and epigenetics is when you use epigenetics, you turn switches on and off. It's a reversible process. When you get into genetics and you start messing with the basic genome, you can never tell what you're going to get. Life's a box of chocolates. And the processes obviously sometimes are not reversible.
Right.
So that's the difference between epigenetics and genetics. Now, where does that come in when we're talking about heavy metals? You are quite right to say, Nikki, that genetics affects our ability to actually fight off these heavy metals, because our body does get instructions from our genes to produce enzymes that can metabolize these heavy metals and get them out of the body. But we need to do things that encourage our genes to pull that trigger.
Right.
And so that's the key thing that Suzi's talking about, is what can we do to pull that genetic trigger to get those enzymes more active and pulling these metals out of our body. So I just wanted to get that terminology clear for people who've maybe never heard the term epigenetics before.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Anybody who watches the show regularly knows that term, because I talk about it endlessly, because it's the most amazing gift, as far as I'm concerned, is epigenetics. when we started to really understand our makeup, right, our genome, there was this thought that, yes, this is who we are, this is how we are, we have no choice in this. And it's so amazingly wrong. And epigenetics gives us power. This is the, for my belief is this is a gift from God. This is free will, right? We have free will. We have the ability to make so many choices. Well, lots and lots and lots of choices, right? I'm not going to say it's 100%, but we have so much power in the choices that we make that dictate how our own lives can be in the future, right? As far as our health is concerned, as well as generations ahead. So, and this is what I love also, is informing and speaking to soon to be parents or people who want to be parents, couples who want to be parents, and what they can do to prepare their body before conception to impact generations of kiddos and generations of health ahead. It's just the most beautiful thing as far as I'm concerned that I know of. so yes, let's get back on target. But yeah, epigenetics is really key to all of this, and we can understand our ability in large part to detoxify or not detoxify, and then how to help our body to detoxify and or pull out with certain things these metals. So let's talk about okay, so here's something that you had brought up earlier, Douglas, was things that have thrown metals sort of more into the spotlight.
Right.
And there's a lot out there. Oh, I wanted to say real quick too, sorry to interrupt. Suzi, you talked about endocrine disruptors. And I want to make sure that there is an understanding of what that means just briefly, because what we find is we have our endocrine system, which is it's our sex hormones, it's all of our hormones, and our hormones are communicators. And so, if just to break it down simply, we have what we call xenoestrogens, which are estrogen mimickers. We also have metalloestrogens, which are estrogen mimickers, and they take the place essentially, or they bind the receptor sites in our estrogen receptor sites in our bodies for men and women. And it creates massive endocrine disruption, right? We have women who struggle terribly with PMS and PMDD, and we have men who are high in estrogen and developing breasts. And there's all of these things that can happen on top of mental and emotional issues that can happen. So I wanted to be sure that I said that, because yes, there are chemicals that can create that, which is the xenoestrogens. Metals can do it as well. Okay, go ahead, Douglas.
Well, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And actually, our institute that I've worked with for the past 30 years, it's based actually out of Hamburg, Germany, specialized in the development of positive lists that stay away from those hormone substitutors, those nasty toxic hormone substitutors that make their way in. The reason this has been called to people's attention recently is, number one, all these wildfires that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
When Lahaina burned down, and all of these major fires that have been going on around the world. Well, when trees, but also all kinds of structures and vehicles burn, they release massive amounts of particulates that contain these heavy metals. So they're in the air, and they're in the smoke, and that can be transported hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the site of the event. And so this has created a very large added heavy metal risk, and people are being given some really good advice and some really bad advice on how to deal with that. We'll talk about that later. One of the things you don't do is, after a fire is run through your area and there's all kinds of soot and dust around, you don't open your windows to clean out the house. Mm-hmm. So that's the stupidest thing you can do, but we'll get to that in a moment. The other thing that's happened is that a few months ago, hundreds of babies across the United States came down with lead poisoning. This isn't high levels of lead. This is like getting sick from lead. And that was because one particular baby food that actually is found in a lot of brands was found to be full of these heavy metals for a bizarre reason. That you're not going to believe this, the spice, one of the spices that was in the baby food, they weigh these spices by weight, and someone had laced it with lead to make it heavier. Now, why wasn't this detected? This wasn't detected because regulatory agencies don't require baby food manufacturers to regularly test their products. The FDA doesn't require it.
Unreal.
Only California just started to do this now. So that's why it went under the radar. But what it exposed was we're feeding heavy metals to the most vulnerable people on the planet, and that's growing babies, because these metals have a huge impact on your first 2 years of life. So those two events have really springboarded this into public awareness.
Unreal. Suzi, you look like you wanted to say something. Do you want to jump in?
No,
Okay.
Actually, that I didn't know how the heavy metals came in the baby food, so I was intrigued by what he just said. I did not realize.
Yeah. So it is fascinating because this is one of the things, I don't know, it was probably in school years ago, but then I have a quick story to go with it. But metals, our spices, our herbs, so often, just your conventional, get them from the grocery store kind of stuff, are often high in heavy metals. Other things that can be high in heavy metals because they were tested. Again, this was a few years ago that I saw this. But is our greens, like our greens powders and our vegan protein powders, can all be high in heavy metals. So I have, it's just disgusting. I have a client who we were working together. He had severe mold toxicity. And so I had a product that I was giving him that was a liposomal curcumin product. Fairly expensive because it works really, really well. What he did, though, without telling me, was like, oh, well, I'm going to buy a bunch of turmeric from India and just start taking that. And ended up with lead toxicity. It's like, never, ever, ever do that. It's really
and the irony
disturbing.
that you pointed out, Nikki, is that there are lots of foods that can help our bodies get rid of heavy metals, that can promote the development of these enzymes and everything else. But if those foods are contaminated with these metals, it's counterproductive. So that's an excellent point that you bring up.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting that you guys are talking about, and I'm not going to name drop any brands, but we do have a mass spec machine where we can test heavy metals. And we have, people, I think this is why it is so important to know the source of where you're getting your products. There's a lot of products online, and we've tested a lot of the greens online of looking at heavy metals, and the results we've gotten are astonishing. It's scary. And so I do think, some people say, should I listen to my doctor when they're recommending a supplement? And some of them are regulated. And so I do think you need to be cautious about what you are putting into your body, because it could be actually increasing that toxic bucket where you're thinking you're doing such a great job. But we have tested a few of them and found there is a lot of heavy metals in these products that, these green products and different things like that you're taking as a supplement. A problem with not being regulated is it could be causing more damage than benefits. And so I'm a big advocate of knowing and sourcing what you're taking, because it could be not benefiting you the way you would hope it would be benefiting you.
So is this data that you have or can release?
No, we did it just on our end, just because we were doing toxic overload testing. We, we have a supplement. So when we produced our supplements, we put them on our mass spec to make sure there was no heavy metals, there is no parabens, there is no mycotoxins. So we were just looking at hey, what is out there? And is this something, especially when we're doing environmental toxin testing, mycotoxin testing, heavy metal testing, we have to have solutions for patients that are making sure that, what we're testing for, what can we give them that we know is a clean product?
Yeah.
So when we were doing some of our looking of, hey, are these good products or not? Because they're a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Is this beneficial?
Mm-hmm.
And those were some of the things that we noticed was there is a lot. It's not regulated online.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of products out there that aren't. So I think you do have to be cautious about the products you are utilizing and making sure that they say on there no heavy metals, no parabens, no mycotoxins. You know what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing.
That's the hardest thing. Oh, go ahead, Douglas.
Suzi's findings have been confirmed by the European Union, who several years ago did a study of the online products being sold into the EU, and 60% of them exceeded the regulatory guidelines for lead. And once again, all the so-called government environmental testing and labels and everything else, no, it's the problem is it's not being enforced. So, people have to take this into their own hands, and that's why companies like Suzi's are so important for being able to provide this and support the work that's done by Consumer Reports and these other independent organizations so that people can inform themselves.
One of the biggest problems I have is when I have clients who come to me and say, well, so I found this green and I'm taking this green and I love it and and what do you think about it? And it's usually one that is, it's an online, whether it's a small company who has really great intentions or not, I have no idea what's in it. I can look at the ingredients and I can say, it looks good, but it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me if it's clean, doesn't tell me if it's non-toxic. I just know from my own my research in the past, and then of course now from the two of you, that so often they're just not safe. And I don't know, without having good data, which I don't know that we still have, and if you have that data, if you can find that, I would love to have that so I can share it, because this is the stuff that people need to know about. And I'm not here to, bash the small company who's trying to do the right thing, but we have to know what we're putting in our body. Maybe this company doesn't know where they're sourcing either, who knows? This kind of testing is really expensive. And so we want to, the best we can, we want to have a good idea of what we're doing. And this is why I choose the particular supplements that I use, because I trust the companies and I trust that they're doing the right thing and doing the testing and making sure that what I'm giving to my clients are the best, they're the top of the top, and there's no question about it. And I just think that that's really, really important.
The only thing I sort of qualify that, Nikki, and I'm sure Suzi will speak, some of the testing is expensive. Other testing that I'm sure Suzi's organization does actually are available to consumers. So there's sort of two levels. The one that you're talking about is looking at the details on the foods and everything else. But on other levels, people can access this data and have the test done themselves.
So they can send food in or powders in to have the testing done? Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, I would put that question over to Suzi, but just to be clear with people, when they hear testing is expensive, some testing is expensive. Sure. Other testing, like the blood and urine tests that Suzi's talking about, are indeed, affordable. You can your results. So I just wanted to distinguish between those two things.
And and that's exactly right. And so my where I was talking about was strictly with testing foods. Yes, sure. Testing testing our bodies is very affordable. So I don't know, Suzi, if you do want to add on to that, but and we're doing specials. So Suzi, if you want to add on to it, then we'll talk about specials for a second.
Yeah, and I do agree with you guys. I mean, testing can be expensive, but when you break it down into, your health, I think there's no price you can put on it. And I think there is a lot of affordable testing you could do. Like we do have a comprehensive total tox burden test that looks at, 20 heavy metals, almost 40 environmental toxins, 30 mycotoxins in a single urine sample. the thing I like about Vibrant, it does have all the validation papers. We have done a very good job of using the gold standard, which is mass spectrometry, to actually do our testing. You know, that test could be a little bit more expensive, but you can always break it down into parts too, and saying, you know, I just want the heavy metal portion, and that one is under $200. So there is ways you can do it, but I also think you can never put a price on your health. And yes, you might have to, you know, not drink Starbucks for a couple days or do something like this, but I do think you have to prioritize your health. And the people that are probably listening to this podcast, I think, are probably prioritizing to their health, because they're wanting information of what they can do to increase lifespan, to decrease inflammation in their body. So I think the one thing Vibrant has done, we are a full cash company. We don't even take insurance, anything like that. But we set these prices so we could give better testing and relevant testing that we think needs to be out there, that is not dictated by an insurance company. And so, you know, I think Vibrant has done a really, really good job of providing cost-effective testing with the sensitivities and specificities that you can trust in what we're producing.
Yeah, totally agree. So I put up, and I think I want to add on to that first, is, you know, probably a lot of people know this and have heard this term, but we consider this functional lab testing. So this really is helping us understand how the body is functioning, why it's functioning as it is. This is, you know, really digging into root cause, right? This is not just looking at symptoms. It's not just looking at, you know, your gut microbiome, which is very, very, very important, but what's deeper than that? You know, we have to go as deep as we can, and toxins and mycotoxins and heavy metals, and then our environment and our emotions, you know, these are the things that are true root cause issues that need to be addressed and need to be found. And so, you know, these labs, Suzi and I were you know, kind of brainstorming. Actually, it was all Suzi's idea. She put all of this together for me. Thank you, Suzi. But these are all things that I run on my clients all the time, because we have to know. And I'm going to tell you that when we're looking at the total tox burden, these are the things that I see that are elevated. I mean, all the time. People are shocked by what they see. They may eat organic, and their glyphosate or their Roundup levels are still high. You might be drinking coffee and getting a significant amount of mycotoxin exposure, or you had a home that flooded and you thought it was remediated and you have a significant amount of mycotoxin exposure. So anyway, I don't want to go too much into this. I did want to pull this up. You can go to the QR code. All these labs, I mean, one of them you're saving almost $500. One you're saving $600. Plus we're doing a 10% on top of that. So thank you to Suzi and to Vibrant for allowing us to do something like this and to give this to you at such a deep discount. We'll have these codes. We'll have these codes in all the places that this video is as well, and the podcast and that kind of thing. But take it, and if you want to jump in on it, this is it's a really great deal. So I'm super excited about it. So I will jump.
One thing I was going to say, just in lab testing, and I think we have to set expectations for patients.
Yeah.
It's a piece of the puzzle. And it's not an end-all be-all. Right. That's why it's great, you know, you can go out to the store now, you can go to Target and buy testing. The one thing I like, though, is with the practitioner involved, there's pieces of the puzzle that you have to put together. You have to know symptoms, you have to know lifestyle, you have to know medications, because labs is just a portion of it that looks at, you know, how we can get patients better outcomes, what's actually going on with that patient. But I do think you have to be careful that it's only a portion of the puzzle to actually get the best outcome that we want for patients.
Yeah.
And I think there's more, you know, because I think some people think, well, the lab results say this, so I have to do this and have to go that. But I do think you have to take the whole picture in order to get the best outcome for patients. And I always put that in there because I think we have to set expectations to knowing it's a picture and it's a puzzle, and we have to put all the pieces together to get the patient to where we want to get them,
Right.
and you know, those type of things.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, you know, to piggyback real quick on what you said, you can buy them at Target, you can buy these things online, you can buy them from Amazon. They are not the same. Please be very clear about the stuff that you can buy from, you know, all of these other places. We've got to be really careful with how, for one, how we're spending our money, because I hate wasting money, and I hate to see my clients waste money. And so that's why I'm so careful about the lab companies that I use and the supplement companies I use, because I trust them and I know they're the best of the best. So with that being said, I just didn't want to just throw out there, yeah, you can just go get one from Target, because it's not good. Anyway, all right, let's do this. Let's jump into, and we've hit on this, I think, a little bit, but unless there's something else you want to talk about, Douglas, I was going to ask about how do we protect ourselves? What can we do?
Yeah, that's definitely next on the list, and I think that's what everyone wants to hear. So
Yeah.
let's talk about air, water, and food.
Yeah.
So when people think about air pollution, they think, well, there's nothing I can do about it because, you know, it's in the air everywhere. And that is absolutely incorrect, because most of us spend 85% of our time indoors. And a lot of that these days is in our homes.
Yeah.
And that environment you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with what's going on with all the wildfires and the temperature extremes, the quality of the air in your house becomes a major health benefit. And one of the key things that you can do, just let you in on a little secret, your air conditioner that everybody is using excessively during these heat waves during the summer, their filters are designed to protect the machinery, but they're not designed to protect your lungs. So you need to have a look at what type of filter is in your air conditioner or your central air handling system, because what you really want to have in there is known as a HEPA filter, which filters out these really, really tiny particles. And the difference with the tiny particles known as PM 2.5 is at that size, they cross the blood-lung barrier, and that's when they really start to cause trouble. So get a good air filter, and if you are, you know, one of millions of people who don't have even air conditioning or don't have a central air system, you can still install a local air purifier, and you can learn at Consumer Reports which are the most reliable ones, right next to where you work. And this will not be as good as the central systems, but it will definitely help. So this use of these HEPA filters, and by the way, you can get these HEPA filters at Home Depot. You can order them online from a reputable source, as we've been talking about, because you don't want to create another problem. And so they are available, and they're available from your air conditioning service company. Now, some of the companies will say, well, our system isn't sized for those HEPA filters. It has to work too hard, you know, in order to do that, and that causes extra energy. I said, so what? You know, 5-10% extra energy to save your lungs is definitely worth it. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. When they say something like that, they're either saying we don't have the filters, you know, or you know, we've got the wrong system. So just really pay careful attention to the air quality in your home. The next thing is, same thing with water. So, you know, in our house, for example, we've got pretty good basic water quality, because like millions and millions and millions of people around the world, we get our drinking water from groundwater, you know, not from a municipal water source. But in either case, you know, in our situation, we have a 5-micron filter, solids, and we have, of course, a UV light filter to get rid of the you know, organic contaminants. but it's that particulate filter. And for people who live in areas where you have really high arsenic and metal concentrations, you've got to have a system that is advertised and designed and certified to take those metals out. So a lot of people, especially in areas where you have old lead pipes in the municipal system or in your house, you've got to pay attention to that, and you've got to make an investment. Again, it's the best investment you'll ever make in your health. And again, go to Consumer Reports to see what are the best water filters. So, your home environment, water filter, air filter. That's some of the best things that you can do. And before I go on, I'm going to turn it over to Suzi. We can talk about then food.
Yeah, I think, I mean, those are all great ideas. I love filtration. I think even you can do the under sink water filtration. I mean, even like I said, it might not fully take everything out, but if you can eliminate your toxic bucket, that is the goal. In order to, reducing risk of triggering autoimmune inflammation. Vibrant also does have a PFAS test. It looks at, if you guys, when you start looking at water, and you can go online and look at what is Colorado. We're in Colorado. What is their Colorado? What does their chemicals look like? It's bad. In big cities, it's always bad. So I agree with you 100%. You can look at their forever chemicals, and the body does not break them down. That's what these chemicals are. And so if you can try to eliminate how many forever chemicals you're putting in your body, it definitely will help in decreasing your toxic overload. And so I like I said, again, there is testing that you can check to see what are your levels looking like, and it might push you to getting some type of filtration center just on the drinking water, at least you're consuming.
I think it's really important to keep in mind that the regular everyday Brita filters, the filter that comes in your refrigerator, these filters are not sufficient. They do not work. They don't work well. They don't work well enough for what we need them to work for. You can go to, I think it's Environmental Working Group, and I think it's ewg.org/maybe water. You can put in your zip code, and you can know exactly how your water looks at exactly where you live, right? And it's really, really scary. It's not good. And so getting a filter, a filter that, even if you can get a filter that even filters out radon, right? And I think my understanding, the only way to do that is through distillation. So radon is a radioactive chemical radioactive element that is in a lot of, I know it's here, I know there's a lot in Texas, I think in California, but it comes up through the earth, but we've got to, it's super harsh on our body. So getting that stuff out and getting good filters, if you can get a home filter, get a home filter. So when we take a shower, when we take a bath, we're bathing our kids, our skin, our body is still taking in all of these contaminants from the water, because it's what our skin does. It's about drinking, but it's also about what we're putting our bodies in. So just keep that in mind.
Want to talk about radon for a second, because we actually have a radon mitigation system in our house here. Okay. So when we bought the house, we had them do a test, and it was not acceptable. And so they before we bought the house, we insisted, home buyers beware. Yes. Right? Have a radon test done on the house that you're going to buy. This is really, really important. And so at their cost, they put in the system. And basically what it does is, it's just a pipe in the ground, and it creates a negative pressure by sucking air out from underneath the house, and then it vents it. So at least in the air, you can, and it dramatically dropped it. We're down to like really very, very low. And so that's an important thing that people can do themselves. And if you're looking at real estate, please pay attention to that.
Yep. Agreed. All right, let's go ahead and move on to food.
Food. So, how's blueberry season in Colorado?
man, I love berries. They're my favorite thing.
Okay, well, Nova Scotia, where I am, up here in Canada, is sort of wants to see itself as the blueberry capital of the planet.
Okay.
Right? But blueberries are really great for getting rid of heavy metals, as long as they're not sprayed with all these nasty toxins. So you've got to get organic, blueberries. But they're really wonderful because they also have all these antioxidants that boost your body's ability to create these enzymes that help you to get rid of, the heavy metals that are in there. So they're supporting your body at the same time. Cilantro is probably one of the best ones, and one of the most subject to contamination. So you've really got to watch where your source of cilantro is coming from. Garlic and onions, chlorella. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Basically, cruciferous vegetables, leafy greens, spirulina, vitamin C rich foods, green tea. You mentioned turmeric earlier, which is important as long as it's not contaminated. And flax is also really good. So there's this long list of foods that that you can use. They're delicious, and they're quite commonly available, but you've got to check to make sure that they themselves are certified free from the metals that you're trying to get rid of. So those are, tons of examples. And, if people want to go also to just go to YouTube, there's a couple of doctors online that have, they really talk about this in quite some detail about what kind of foods you can use. So, you can do that as well.
So I would love to add on to that because foods are amazing. When I was in school, there was one of my classmates. We have a whole thesis project that we have to do in order to get our master's certification. So her husband was high in, maybe it was lead. I don't remember what it was, but they tested him. He was high, and they gave him cilantro constantly. It was like every meal is a ton of cilantro. They did lower his levels. So really cool stuff that you can see that this they bind out and pull out these toxins. What I will say though is, as amazing as food is, when we have this toxin overload, our buckets overflowing, we have to be therapeutic about it. We have to have a very strategic approach about pulling these out. One, because as you start to mobilize these toxins, they can create more issues, and we want to make sure that we are aware of that and that we're careful with that. But there are specific supplements, and I'm going to throw this out real quick because everybody knows that I love Cellcore, but we can get binders that are specific to toxins, specific to specific toxins, right? And specific to metals, and specific to radiation, and specific to microorganism toxins. So we can be really specific with these binders that help to pull out these toxins out of the tissues and out of the body. And awesome, Susie, thank you. So it's really important to know that we can do this, but it's important to know how to do it. And so Susie's got I forgot you were going to share your screen, but this is a great sample test. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is just knowing what heavy metals you're being exposed to, because then, like Nikki's saying, or you can do foods, but we can be more pointed on how we can start decreasing some of these toxins out of the body. So this is a sample report of a heavy metals test. It tells you where you could possibly be getting contamination from, associated risk. Maybe you can connect it to some of the issues you're having, and then it gives you detox suggestions. Like Nikki was saying, is we can always do certain types of foods, but also we know specific things, DMSA, which can bind specific heavy metals. And so I think it can help you, and if you know the exposure and where the levels are a little bit higher, it helps us give a pointed protocol of where we can decrease some of these issues.
Yep.
That is the benefit of testing. It's test, don't guess, because most of the symptoms with any type of toxin exposure, do we know it's an environmental toxin? Is it a heavy metal? Is it a mycotoxin? Most of the symptoms are they're overlapping. And so if we know, where you're getting the exposure. It helps your provider then help in putting on a protocol that's pointed to get your outcomes and, you know, results and get you feeling better a lot quicker.
Yeah, totally agree. And you know, once you start to pinpoint where it's coming from, then you can start to mitigate it, right? Oh, I didn't realize I was getting so much of this from, you know, whatever it might be, and you can start to try to eliminate or avoid it, you know, the best you can, right? Not everything's perfect, but super helpful. There's also, because you pointed out, there's chelation therapy, which is usually an IV chelation therapy, not something that I can do, but there are practitioners out there who will set you up on an IV, and like you said, the DMSA goes in through the IV and helps to chelate out or pull out or bind out these metals from your body. The amazing therapies that we can do to clean up our body is fascinating to me. It's so, I get so excited when I talk with practitioners, you know, other practitioners, because these aren't things that I can do, about what we can do to help people who have these major chronic issues due to the toxicities, due to the mold exposures, all of these things that they're not able to get better. And we can start to really help people get out of this really chronic place with these therapies that are coming out. But even with the supplements make huge differences. The things that I've seen are just mind-blowing to me, just in my own practice. So good stuff. I think Douglas, is there anything that you want to add?
Well, people can, you know, the question is, what can they do? You can go and look at the Clean Label Project, especially if you're interested in baby foods, because they've actually certified baby foods that are free of heavy metals. You can read all the reports on Consumer Reports. So those are two really invaluable sources. And, you know, the other thing you can do is read the book. So, and because in the book we talk about the services such as, you know, what Vibrant is offering, and other things that people can do. So I think that's one thing that everyone can do.
Show your book real quick.
Here's the book. It's called Discovering the Nature of Longevity, Restoring the Heart and Body by Targeting Hidden Stress. And in this case, the hidden stress is all these nasty heavy metals that we've been talking about on the show today, and what's being done about them. I will add that, you know, you can get this on Amazon. It's been on the bestseller list, number one on the bestseller list a couple of times. So it's nice to see that people are picking it up. But what I'd also like to add is that there's some breaking news coming out that there's a new clinical trial that's been published that shows, after all the controversy, that chelation therapy has succeeded in reducing lead levels in patients by 60%. And that was a double-blinded randomized trial done across the United States. The other thing I would mention is that there's an oral product, and I am not affiliated with the product at all. It's called Nanobac TX. It's one of the very few combination oral chelation and nutraceutical products that has really been shown to be effective, because it has a patented capsule that protects the chelating substance from the digestive fluids so that it can be absorbed through the intestine. Most of these oral EDTA products are useless because they're destroyed by stomach acids. So there are a few oral chelation products as well, but you know, you have to be really careful about the ones that you choose and make sure that they're actually making it into the bloodstream.
That's absolutely true. I agree. So what was it? Oral BTX? It's
called Nanobac TX. NANOBAC TX.
Okay.
And if you just Google that, it'll take you straight to the website. It's done by. It's been on the market for 25 years. 25 years it's been on the market.
Fascinating.
And it's out of Florida. It's developed by Dr. Gary Mazzeau. He's got a company called Biotech Pharma. And I've used the product myself. It's gotten good results, especially on cardiovascular.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I've got no financial connection to the company.
Yep, cool. Yeah, it is important to know that you're taking the right things. I'll just jump back in real quick to Cellcore, only because of their humic and fulvic acid is what helps it get into the cell and get into the body and pulls out the specific toxins. So there are great things. There are good options, but you got to know. You got to know what you're doing, and you got to know that it's doing its job, just like anything else. All right, and Suzi, anything you would like to add?
No, I love that. I do think longevity, we're trying to find like-minded people of looking into this space of like how we can bring education, resources to patients to help them live a healthy, long life. When you retire, what we say is you don't want to try to get to retirement and then all of a sudden you get sick. How can we create a longer lifespan, which we know with all the resources out there, there's a ton of things we can do. So I am going to put this up, and this is more for any practitioners that possibly are listening.
Okay.
But we are putting on, we have a longevity summit that we're putting on. I love his book is talking about longevity toxins. We have phenomenal speakers. This is going to be in San Jose. This is out in California where our lab is at. And I think it's just, like I said, educating yourself to knowing there is other things out there that we can provide to really help patients get better. Doctors provide different testing to patients to, figure out inflammation in the body and what can we do about it and how can we create the best lifespan in our patients. And that's really, us as practitioners, providers, that is our goal, is not put a Band-Aid approach over it, but what can we give, what resources can we do to give patients, their best life possible.
Yeah, so, I love this. I am hoping to be there. That would be
we have phenomenal speakers. I mean, I'm just going to show you guys a couple. Everybody knows Dr. Mark Hyman, Rhonda Patrick, Andy Galpin. So we have, and really what we want is where can we improve this market? Yeah. What can we do as like-minded people to partner together to give our patients better resources? And the more we're educated, the more that like-minded people can get together. We want to give better health care. We don't want it sick care anymore. We want it health care. And how can we keep our patients healthy for a long, long time?
Awesome. Agreed. Yay. This was so good. So good. Thank you both for joining me. Vibrant, you can, I've had the link up, so you can always go to, it's Vibrant Wellness, Vibrant America.
You can go Vibrant-Wellness, but put up you have a store link with some of the testing we talked about, and as patients, you can go into the store and you can purchase the tests. The cool thing about it, they're at-home tests. You don't have to get a blood draw with most of them we put on there. You can just do it in the comfort of your home, send it back, and then Nikki will go over it with you.
Yeah, so good. So I love that they're finger prick. It just makes life so much easier. And then you can find Douglas. I have his links everywhere. All of these links are going to be everywhere that the videos are, right? But Douglas, did you already say where you could be found?
It's at natureoflongevity.com. That's all one word, natureoflongevity.com.
Perfect.
And the shorthand for it is calcify.com. That's calcify.com. That comes from calcification, which is hardening of the arteries. So
big problem. Awesome. All right. And of course, I can be found at tastelifenutrition.com for the website, and then Taste Life Nutrition everywhere else. You can go to the website, you can fill out a free assessment, and I will reach out to you personally. We will chat about all the things that are going on with you, and how we might be able to help, or if we need to refer you to someone, then we can do that as well. So I've got my goal is to be a resource, and I've got lots of great resources at my disposal, which is amazing. And I'll throw out real quick, Soulful Conception, of course, is when we were talking about, the key to, one of the big factors in creating healthy families and healthy future is, of course, being healthy before getting pregnant. So Soulful Conception is sort of my little heart project to help people plan for pregnancy, plan before conception, to get healthy and mitigate any symptoms that might be going on, so we can just continue to create health for the future. So we are going to continue next week with Douglas. I probably just Douglas at this point. Suzi, you can always feel free to join us as well. I was hoping to have someone else join, but that's not going to happen, but that's okay. This is going to be a good time. Remind me what the topic is for next week, Douglas?
Well, I think that we're just going to move on from what we've got here to talk indeed about longevity.
Perfect. I love it. Cool. Let's do that. So we'll be back here at 10 a.m. Mountain Time next week. Join us for another amazing show with Douglas Mulhall. And that's what we got. So we'll see you here in a little bit. If you two want to stay with me here for just a second, that would be great. Thanks, everybody. See you later.